B4B TV. Real people, real stories, real Bradford.
Hello and welcome to Bradford. I'm your host, Dr. Sohail Ahmed, Chair of Bradford for Better, and welcome to another show today, B4B TV, the platform that shines a light on the people, the organizations and the communities making Bradford better. And this week we have a very special guest again with us. If you haven't already heard, this week is International Refugee Week. And yesterday, 20th of June, was International Refugee Day. And to mark this occasion, we have a very special guest who works with refugees and has done for many years in Bradford. So I'd like to welcome on the show, Will Sutcliffe. Welcome, Will.
Well, thanks very much. Very happy to be here.
Thank you for joining us. So we have a lot of questions, a lot of interesting topics to discuss, including Refugee Week, including City of Sanctuary, Bradford, and some of the work that Will is doing in Bradford. So to start off, Will, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your role in Bradford and City of Sanctuary?
Yeah. So back in about 2008, I heard of the newly formed or recently formed National City of Sanctuary movement, which is probably about 10 organizations or 10 groups have been founded by that time. And they had the first national conference in Sheffield. And I was working, I still work on a voluntary basis at a charity called Beacon. And with that charity, I run a small hosting project, finding volunteer households to accommodate refuged asylum seekers who are destitute. I was also very involved with an organisation called Biosan. You and I both know Mo Rahman very well, and Biosan are absolutely magnificent. And a number of other frontline organisations involved in. I think we had I had a sense that we were pedaling very hard and doing a lot of good work, but there needed to be work back upstream, trying to do wider environmental change to influence a lot of factors that were making the lives of people seeking sanctuary more difficult. Now, clearly, there are wonderful organisations like Amnesty International and many fantastic aid agencies doing great work in terms of rights and access to support in the countries that people flee from. But we felt the need in the UK to be trying to influence the environment. Well, for us here in Bradford. Sheffield was the first city of sanctuary in the UK. I won't go into that history, but we worked very hard. We got got a carload to that conference, came back and decided to launch. And just 3 months later, we had our official launch in Bradford with Lord Mayor opening for us and a good amount of press coverage. Latterly, we became a registered charity. We remain very small. We just normally have 2 members of staff and quite a bit of volunteer effort. So what the City of Sanctuary movement is around, the strapline always was creating a culture of welcome and hospitality. And in different, there's well over 100 groups now in different towns and cities and valleys and boroughs. They work in different ways. But the fundamental is to try and influence the environment. So to work to create awareness and understanding. So many people have their only diet is what they hear from politicians and some sectors of the media, and there's a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of prejudice around the issues of asylum and refugee seeking. There's a real need to get accurate information out there, and opportunities such as this are wonderful. Really happy to be able to be speaking here. So we work a lot with any local institution that is willing to look at what they do and how it can be made more accessible, more relevant for people seeking sanctuary.
Thank you very much. Well, before we came on the show, we were talking about how emotive this subject is. refugees, asylum, and it's never clear cut, and people, they feel very passionate about the subject. But unfortunately, getting relevant information, accurate information sometimes is difficult, and knowing what narrative to kind of listen to on the news, and people are not as trusting of the news as they used to be, perhaps. So it is important to have an alternative and people that work in the sector like yourself to give us that sort of frontline information, so to speak. So going back to City of Sanctuary, many of our listeners may not be aware that Bradford has the status of City of Sanctuary.
Yeah.
Now, what exactly does that mean?
Yeah.
And what exactly is, I know you've touched on it, what exactly is City of Sanctuary? Is it funded body? Is it a funded body? Is it publicly funded? Is it private? Is it a charity? Just more details about what this organization is.
So nationally, City Sanctuary is described as a movement. There's no central control. They support and resource groups as they develop around the country. So we're an independent registered charity. We don't receive any government funding or from except for occasional project work from the local authority. So we're entirely supported via trust funding bids and a number of generous donors. This isn't a fundraising pitch, but it's always a struggle to keep that income coming in. But so it's still a young movement. When we joined, it was very young, and I think the way it's run and the processes have changed. But certainly for the first few years, towns and cities were encouraged to apply for the award of a town or a city of sanctuary, and Bradford was only the third in the UK to be given that status awarded it back in 2010. That recognised there was a comprehensive application put in, an appraisal process carried out by the national body. It recognised that there is a long-term commitment in this city across a whole breadth of different areas to provide welcome and support for people seeking sanctuary. So just as an example, Bradford was one of the first cities to sign up to the Home Office's dispersal programme for asylum seekers back in 1999, so that's over 20 years now. We're one of the early cities, and not many of them, who accept people through the UNHCR's refugee resettlement programme, and Horton Housing have done magnificent work in that. We have an absolutely outstanding and nationally recognised medical practice, Bevan Healthcare, which specialises in supporting asylum seekers, refugees and homeless people. And then there's an incredible diversity of small charities and individual expressions of kindness and welcome from people, as I mentioned before we started, who open their homes to house homeless asylum seekers, people who donate houses, believe it or not, people who volunteer, cut hair, befriend, help with legal processes, a whole vast spectrum of support. And that goes back quite some time, and back in 2010 that was what was recognised. Just over 3 years later we went through a process of review, and in 2014 that was renewed. Since then the national movement has grown and developed a lot, and they now work on a local authority of sanctuary. Well, they've instituted a local authority of sanctuary ward to get local authorities to apply for and commit to achieving what the requirements of that award. And we work with Bradford, closely with Bradford Council, and again they were about the third or fourth in the country back in December to receive that award. And in fact, this Friday morning at City Hall at 10 o'clock rather, there's a celebration event for that award, which would be, it's an open event. No institution is perfect, and we're very able to challenge the council as others where it's needed. But I genuinely am proud of this city, and I think when I meet with colleagues in other areas, it's evident that the work that Bradford Council does is significantly more generous and better developed than many other areas. So yeah, that's the sort of the national recognition of Bradford. The Sanctuary Awards can apply in a number of different areas. So for about 7 or 8 years now, we've employed somebody to work in local schools towards the School of Sanctuary Award, and that's developed really well. And that's in all the award applications, the organisation has to evidence that they have they've learnt, embedded, and shared. Learnt, that means in a school that they're, for example, we're helping them to provide curriculum materials to make sure that children have accurate teaching on asylum and refugee issues, that they're better equipped to support and understand the needs of their fellow pupils who may be from refugee backgrounds. There's a whole school approach in that, so that teachers and ancillary staff receive training. The sharing means that the school, if it's part of an academy chain or has a primary school or a senior school attached to it, that they will work with that school or those other schools to share what they've learned. And wherever possible, they'll get involved in the children in volunteering or fundraising. And there's some really, really good examples of some wonderful schools that have taken part and continue to, and the project's developing. So Bradford University became a University of Sanctuary in 2017, and they provide, amongst other things, scholarships for asylum seekers, the people who are still fighting to get their legal right to remain in the country, instead of having enforced idleness where they're not allowed to work. They're able to study, to degree level, which is pretty remarkable, really. And just this week, Bradford College have been granted the award, have been assessed, and will be given the award. And again, they're doing some really, really excellent work. I think probably worthy of national recognition for the quality of the welcome and the support for asylum seekers and refugees.
Many people would recognise Bradford globally as a welcoming city over well over 100 years, longer perhaps.
Absolutely.
It always has had a rich history of welcoming people, whether it was from war-torn places around the world or seeking asylum for whatever reason. So it's amazing to see the work that you're doing and having this status of City of Sanctuary, and realizing that actually it's not just one organization. I mean, I wasn't aware of Bradford University and the awards and the work that you do with schools. So that is amazing. So the question will be how people listening out there, whether it's people who work in schools, faith organizations, youth clubs, how can people get involved with the work that you're doing, City of Sanctuary? How can we promote awareness of refugees, asylum seekers, and how can we support them, practically speaking, and obviously with City of Sanctuary status?
Well, there's so many ways on our website. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm able to share screen, but I could put it on the screen if I were. But if people want to visit our website, Bradford, just Google Bradford City of Sanctuary or Sanctuary City of Sanctuary Bradford. There's a resources page, and there we've got information sheet on a whole variety of ways in which people can get involved in volunteering, not just with our work, although people really, we're always very, very keen to get more people involved, but with the range of other small charitable other organisations in the city, such as Biosan, Beacon, Abigail Housing, Hope Housing, and others who are doing really great work, but really do need volunteer support. And there's such a breadth of ways people can get involved. I usually say to people, well, what do you do best? What do you enjoy doing? And we'll try and find a way of enabling you to do that to benefit asylum seekers. It could be you're a really keen footballer. It could be you sew or knit. It could be you cut hair. It could be that you're very good at IT. It could be you've got a good head for figures. It could be just a good, a wise befriending opportunity. You could be a cook. There's so many different ways that people can get involved. It's clearly the needs of people seeking sanctuary as broad and wide as the rest of ours, and we're all multifaceted people, and there's so many aspects to our personalities and our needs that there's almost no end to the ways that people can get involved in volunteering and supporting. I would just say that it's not a one-way street, anything but. At risk of sounding sort of a bit prosaic, really, we are immensely privileged as Bradford with the people we welcome here. Some aspects of the media talk about people coming to take our jobs and take our homes. People we meet, the vast majority have fled unimaginable situations, stuff of our really of our worst nightmares. Many of them are highly educated, very experienced, competent people, and desperate to contribute. So we've run help into volunteering courses with Bradford Volunteer Centre to, at very least, to enable people in the asylum process who are not allowed to work, to enable them to get into volunteering and to be able to start to give something back, which is what they really want to do. But it's just so many ways in which people contribute culturally. This week Refugee was many lovely examples of artwork and music and cooking and other things where people are contributing.
I can relate to the experience on a personal level. A number of years ago, I don't know whether you've come across Arise Mentoring.
I'm not an expert, but it rings bells. Yeah,
with the Bradford Foundation Trust, and it was a scheme that was set up, and it's still actually ongoing, where we professionals, people who from Bradford, are mentoring a young adult who's either a refugee or has come through asylum, seeking asylum. And I had the pleasure of mentoring a young chap whose family were from Palestine. This is a couple of years ago, and I'm still in touch with them. And I absolutely, it was one of the most amazing experiences I ever had. And it wasn't me mentoring him, it was a two-way relationship. And that was the biggest experience, the surprise for me.
Yeah.
Parents became friends. We're family friends now, my wife, my mother, their family. And I learned from them. It wasn't just me supporting them, and it's kind of like me having to go and do something as an onerous task or something. It was actually a pleasure. It was very informal, and I learned, at the time I was learning Arabic, and they spoke Arabic, and his mum was actually a teacher, so I got to practice and learn with him. And he was about 17 or 16 at the time, and he was teaching me and correcting me.
Yeah,
it was kind of humbling as an experience, thinking, they have so much to give. They're not just people in need that need a handout. They actually want an opportunity. They are motivated. They are sort of passionate to aspiring to do things and make
lifetime friendships are formed. Yeah.
Let's talk now about Refugee Week this week, and it's an international event celebrated all around the world, International Refugee Week. So tell us, why is such an event necessary, and what's the importance of it? What does it bring to us?
I think it's a great opportunity to tell a different story, because so much of the media attention, so many political utterances many of them are fundamentally untrue. They're actually falsehoods. But apart from anything, just the general tenor of conversation is around a problem, an issue, a challenge. Refugee Week is a wonderful opportunity annually across many countries to celebrate the contributions that refugees bring, just to raise awareness. I mean, there are world days for just about everything. No doubt there's a world ping pong day or something, which is great, nothing against table tennis. But I'm glad refugees get a week, because there is so much to tell. So it's an opportunity for many celebrations. And this year, probably more than many years, it's a really broad program. Again, if people want to, I mean, there are many ways to find it. It's on different sites, but if you go to our website, to the news page, you'll find it on there. We're only 1.5 days through so far, and lots yet to happen, culminating in a wonderful celebration in Peel Park in BD2 on Saturday, joint with the Joe Cox Great Get Together. But no, it's a great opportunity to celebrate, great opportunity for refugees themselves to express themselves, in a public sphere through in many different ways, through art, poetry, song, writing, or whatever. And just to raise awareness. There was a fabulous event yesterday in City Park when the Little Amal giant puppet, which achieved a lot of media attention last year when it walked across Europe from Syria, where we were privileged to have it in Bradford yesterday. And it was just wonderful to see City Park absolutely heaving with people who were learning about the story of Little Amal, the model of a little puppet of a little Syrian girl who's had to flee her home. And in the morning, it went to one of the local schools, which is a school of sanctuary, and great opportunity just to get a different story out there. And for a celebration, there was music, there was dance. I think it's so important to show that the term refugee is not problem. It's a status that people don't wish upon themselves. And I pray God I'll never be forced to flee my home as a refugee.
Now, as I mentioned earlier, the whole sort of topic of refugees, asylum seekers, unfortunately, it can be a very heated topic and very emotive for many people. But sometimes we have to kind of tackle it head on and have those difficult conversations. And it's good to have those conversations, I suppose, very early on. And some of the work that you're doing with kind of awarding schools sanctuary status, it's very important to have that understanding and know the sort of global climate we live in essence, because we're not just one city, we're not just one community, we're a global community now, and we have to have that worldview and understand what goes on around the world and how it impacts us. Now, what I want to touch on is in recent months, now we're nearly 4 months in with the war in Ukraine. How has that impacted your work, and how have the dynamics of what refugees and asylum seekers are changed because of this? And the reason I ask that is because very early on, when the war started, there was a lot of, I would say, quite openly biased reporting and kind of different categorizing refugees as from the Middle East or Africa, and these are different types of refugees. And again, it's a very emotive subject, but that's the perception, and that's what the reporting quite objectively was in the news as well, that these people from Ukraine were different from the other types of refugees that we were normally used to seeing.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on this, and has this impacted your work?
Yes and no. The situation is truly awful in Ukraine. The suffering of people there is absolutely appalling. To be forced out of your home, to see loved ones murdered, it doesn't matter where you come from, which country from, that is indescribably awful, and you need help. However, people who have fled Yemen, Syria, Eritrea, a country that doesn't often feature in the headlines, Iran, Iraq, Sudan, and numerous other countries, Democratic Republic of Congo, do face on a daily basis the same horrors. And there should be no reason for a wealthy country such as ours to discriminate depending on where somebody has suffered these devastations. However, the government in its wisdom, and quite rightly in many ways, has provided eventually quite a generous package for Ukrainians wanting to arrive in the UK. In terms of their refugee statuses, well, they have the right to work, to live, to claim benefits, to access healthcare from day one, and other support, and rightly so. Now, in the news last week was all the farce around the Rwanda flight, and the premise of sending people to Rwanda is the one which is frequently stated, that these people are arriving, they are illegal asylum seekers. They have arrived illegally, they've broken into the country, they haven't been invited. The reality is there is no legal route. There are no legal routes to claim asylum in the UK. People have to arrive here through illegal means to be able to lodge an asylum claim. They cannot lodge an asylum claim from the home country or any of the countries they might travel through en route. People have to arrive here. So it's disingenuous to say that these are illegal immigrants when there's no provision for them to arrive legally. And all the attention is put on the evil of the people traffickers. These are evil people. They're exploiting tragic people, just as traffickers exploit the vulnerable. But what they're doing is providing, albeit through a very discriminatory and prejudicial route, they're providing a means to people to have their legal right to claim asylum. If we could establish legal routes, there would be no need for people traffickers. So the problem is with the legislation, not with the people traffickers. The people, to come back to what I said before, people fleeing in desperation, it doesn't matter what country they're fleeing from, they have a right. The other thing it's just worth pointing out is that we receive a tiniest proportion of the world's refugees. The vast majority, I should have some statistics available, but I can easily access them for anybody who's interested. The vast majority of refugees flee to the neighboring countries, the countries which often are also impoverished, unstable, and least able to cope. In 2020, we were 18th in UK. UK was 18th in Europe in terms of number of asylum applications per head of population. So that any claim that we're flooded is just not true. Yes, certainly more people have been coming in the last year by boat. We're still way down, less than half of the number of asylum applicants that there were in 2002. That's not to say that there aren't many, and we need to process them far more efficiently and compassionately.
It's very unfortunate, the current state. I mean, would it be fair? This is my own observations. I can't say if it's true or not, but there seems to be in recent years a rise in sort of more nationalistic worldviews and a closing down of borders, not physically, but in terms of the openness that perhaps used to be the case 10, 15 years ago, and less tolerance in society in general, especially in the UK following Brexit. There seems to be this whole, our jobs and jobs for British people, and they're taking our jobs. These are the kind of the words that we hear thrown around, and it seems that refugees, asylum seekers are kind of scapegoats many times of the ills and problems and ailments of society generally. Was that fair to say? And what would you say to that?
I think that's fair to say in terms of the public discourse. What we see is extraordinary, not tokens, far more than tokens, expressions of welcome and generosity from so many people across the city and across the UK. So what gets into the media, what the politicians quote, is absolutely as you describe, and sadly, part of the establishment deliberately promote misinformation and partial information to feed those who, for better or worse, don't want to or are not inclined to dig a little deeper. It's easier to believe a soundbite than to actually question and to maybe check your source.
Yeah.
So there's a polarization. There certainly is a shift to a sort of a sorry to use the term, but a little Englander mentality amongst parts of the population, and politicians will pay to that.
Again, from a historical perspective, you look at this is a trend throughout history. Whenever there's economic crises, economic depression and turmoil in society, it seems that the others,
Absolutely,
those that are seen as not part of our communities and society, those that are not of us, unfortunately these are sort of terms used, they seem to be the targets, and easy targets for many to blame all the ills and all the problems. And we see that throughout history, and we've seen the end result of that also in the worst case scenario in Europe in the Second World War. And this is sometimes the inception of that whole idea, and it can grow into real serious problems for society.
indeed.
So I think, from a personal point of view, the care, concern, compassion, humanity, we have to hold on to. We cannot allow our compassion and welcoming nature to be the victim of economic crisis.
Yeah,
And
great, Tali.
It's so heartening to see Bradford is amongst the most welcoming places, and cities and the people of Bradford are welcoming and caring and compassionate. What message do you have for people out there, practically speaking, as well as kind of for those that there may be an apathy, sense of cynicism, sense of kind of pessimism about where society is at the moment when it comes to asylum seeking people, refugees, welcome people? Those that are disheartened and think, well, we can't do anything about this, and this is just going to get worse, and they're going to dump everybody across to Rwanda, and this is the beginning of the end.
Yeah,
there's a lot of apathy and pessimism around this whole subject. What message of hope and of practicality do you have for the people out there in Bradford?
I think on a different variety of levels, there is a campaigning level which is vital. We joined the Together with Refugees coalition, which was launched late summer last year and has grown immensely. It's hundreds of member organisations, small and large now, working together to campaign on these issues. The charity Asylum Matters do some really we work closely with them. They do some good work. So part of the work is just to get accurate information out into the public sphere. So yes, write to your MP. We do still apparently live in a democracy, and MPs cannot say nobody ever writes to me about this if we deluge them with our concerns. They may or may not already be sympathetic. They may never be going to be sympathetic, but they can't say nobody's talking about this. But the other side of it is just keep disproving what others are saying and do everything we can to make this city, this country, a place of welcome. And the most powerful argument against the narrow-minded and the prejudice is to put our opinions and our sympathies into practice and get out there and enrich ourselves by encountering the refugees, just as you did with the young lad who you befriended. You've been enriched through that. We, as a family, have been immensely enriched by those we've thought we were befriending, but it's always at least a two-way street. So yeah, get out there and disprove the bigots. But yeah, if people are willing and interested, there's any number of different ways to get involved, and we're always really pleased to talk. And to say, on our website we have a page called Action Ideas and Resources page. Just give some prompts there.
What we'll do is have all the websites and links that you've mentioned. I'll get some more details from you and have those in the description wherever this podcast goes. that information will be there. And in fact, we'll put it on our website as well, bradfordforbetter.com. We'll add all these on there. So we'd love to have you on again because there's so much to talk about, and this is really a hot topic, and I think it needs regular reminders for people listening. So we've touched on a few topics today, but I always like to end with a quick fire round. I'll ask you some questions if that's okay, just to kind of get an idea of your thoughts. And again, we could talk for hours on this subject, and it is a really passionate subject for me personally as well. So I'm really grateful for you to come on the show and talk about this. Quick question, actually, I nearly forgot. The theme for this Refugee Week is actually healing, and healing through arts and communities and culture. And I found that very interesting because it kind of ties in with our recent City of Culture win for 2025. How much, if any, impact do you think this City of Culture status will have with the work that you're doing at City of Sanctuary?
Good question. I think you were describing a minute ago how when people are beleaguered, where things aren't going well, they look around for somebody to blame. If more and more people in this city are able to love the city, to recognize the beauty of it, the extraordinary artistic and other contributions, if we begin to feel better about our city, then we're probably less likely to look for scapegoats. But just as Bradford was built, in its heyday anyway, it was built upon migration, forced or otherwise. So the cultural sphere is built upon and massively enriched by the contributions of people who have not necessarily chosen to come here, but have been forced to flee their country. So there's so many ways. Bradford isn't just the curry capital of the world; it's the international cuisine capital of the world. You can eat food from pretty well any country in Bradford. So it's an opportunity for all sectors of community to be able to celebrate their cultures, which contribute to the city of culture.
Absolutely. And again, these are themes that remind us that we have more in common, that remind us that we are as a basic level, we are human, and arts, music, food, expression, verbal, physical, artistic expression, these are the things that make us human. And actually these are ways to break down those barriers, and these others are not as different or as apart as we may think, because we all feel the same, we all think the same, we all our lives in essence are pretty much very similar. So it's amazing to see the synergy of arts, culture, and healing through this work that's going on. So excellent. So going back to the quick fire round, what is, in your opinion, the best thing about Bradford?
It's difficult to not trip over cliches, but it has to be the people. I moved here 18 years ago. I've actually lived here longer now than anywhere else. And it was the welcome. When we arrived, we live in a cul-de-sac in BD2. When we arrived, every house came round to welcome us with a card and a gift. We had a street party a couple of weeks ago. It had the whole breadth of the community, age, ethnicity, ability there. And it was wonderful. It just made me so proud to be in the city. So I think, it has to be the people. It's got some wonderful architecture. Clearly, it's a city of film, it's a city of sanctuary, city of culture. But all of that is because of the people who are here. We're a rich place in terms of our people. I don't deny, and it would be disingenuous and naive to deny that we're a city with considerable and very complex problems. But I think we hold the answers within the city to most of the vast majority of those.
I hope so, and that's what this effort is, I suppose, in some part, to work with people like yourselves and try and solve these problems. So going on to problems, what one thing, I mean, our vision, our aim as Bradford for Better is to make Bradford better. But everybody's idea of what would make Bradford better is different. In your opinion, with your experience, what one thing, if you could pick to make Bradford better, what would it be?
Yeah, put me on the spot there. What would make us better? I will pick on one thing. It doesn't mean this is the thing or the most important thing. You know, I'm old enough to remember a talk about the brain drain. The politicians and others bemoan the fact that all our best brains were going overseas. We now have a brain gain in this city, and we need to recognize that. If we want to prosper again, we need to create opportunities, facilitate opportunities for people to contribute in the city who are currently excluded for whatever reasons. And refugees are very, very significant amongst those. It is nightmarishly difficult. I came off a call just before this from a friend who was a webmaster of a national newspaper in his own country. He's been here 5 years now. He's still delivering Chinese takeaways at less than the national minimum wage, and that is just criminal. So we need, a city where everybody is enabled to contribute. We've got those people here, but there are too many factors at play which actually inhibit that.
Absolutely, I completely agree with that. And you mentioned earlier one of the success stories that I know of with the restaurant that you mentioned, and that chap I know personally, and he's got a PhD. He was quite highly qualified, and amongst other friends that he has in the restaurant trade as well. Yet they ended up in that trade and made a success of it. So they were the skills that they have, the talents that some of these people have are universal and they're translatable into other sectors.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and they're creating wealth. They're providing employment for others. Again, this ludicrous lie that refugees are coming here to take our jobs. Many are coming here to create jobs, create employment, create wealth.
Absolutely. And just touching back on the point that you made earlier, that refugees, asylum seekers, the others are seen as a problem that needs to be solved. Out of sight, out of mind kind of mentality that's now prevalent. And I suppose one of the key areas that we can look at and work on is how do we change that mindset, that this is not a problem to be solved, this is an opportunity to be taken, utilized. And I suppose that's, again, from a psychological kind of media perspective, the narrative, to change that narrative, that actually these are not the perceptions that are being created. And the power of the media, it really is beyond words when it comes to creating a narrative to malign an entire population or a group of people as a problem, as somehow a black mark on our seemingly prosperous society, as though there weren't any problems before asylum seeking refugees turned up. So that is a key element of changing the narrative, is changing that perception that this is not a problem. These people have skills, they just need that opportunity. That's something I think to take away from today, for me and for others listening. I hope we can take that message away.
I'm immensely grateful, genuinely, for this opportunity. There'll be people watching this, listening to this, who we're not likely to encounter in that, through our own channels. So, the more channels we can all take advantage of, and the more people we can reach, then the better chance we have of seeing real change.
I hope so. I just one last thing that I like to do at the end. Can you see that?
I can. Oh, very good. Thank you very much.
So this is a token of our appreciation from Bradford for Better, certificate of appreciation.
Okay.
For Will Sutcliffe for making Bradford better in your way, and getting us the City of Sanctuary status and all the amazing work that you are doing in Bradford. So thank you very much for that.
I haven't taken any time to return the compliments, but immense respect to you for all that Bradford for Better doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much
All
to
right.
our listeners, and please stay tuned. We will have more guests this week for the International Refugee Week. We have some more guests lined up and some very interesting events happening in Bradford. So keep watching. Thank you very much.
You've been watching B4B TV. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And join us next time for another episode.